The Florida heartland is known as Red Country, but my next guest may be turning a portion of Florida into from a red state, excuse me, to a purple region in the state. She joins me now. I have her right here, Deva Simmons. Thank you so much. You're running as an independent. Thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So, what inspired you to run for Congress?
Well, Cameron, let me start with this. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. And I am running for Congress because the people in District 18, they deserve leadership that truly listens and shows up. So for far too long, and too many families in our district and across this country, they felt unheard and overlooked, left behind by politics as usual. People are working harder, yet struggling more than ever. They're worried about how to afford groceries and healthcare. We've got educators who feel unsupported and unsafe. Some seniors, they're anxious about retirement and prescription drugs. We've got young people, they're even questioning whether the American dream is even attainable. And so when people speak up about their struggles, they often feel like no one is listening, but I'm listening. And I'm running because representation should be about people, not parties, power, or personal agendas. It should be about listening before speaking, serving before leading, and putting the needs of the community above political games. So I'm running because leadership should not be distant or disconnected. It should be present, it should be accountable, and people should be willing to roll up their sleeves and get to work. I bring to this race lived experience, a career in education, and most importantly, a heart for people. I'm not someone who has watched from the sidelines. I've lived it. I understand what it means to work hard and still have concerns about the future. I understand what it means to juggle responsibilities and feel like it's still not enough, and what it means to pray, not just for success, but for strength. There were seasons in my life when healthcare wasn't guaranteed like now, and wages didn't stretch far enough. And I ask, how am I going to make this work? But I still get up, they still get up, and they do the best they can. And these experiences, Cameron, they didn't harden me, they shaped me. They taught me empathy, they taught me perseverance, and they taught me that policy is not abstract, it's personal. That's why I believe leadership must be accessible. I believe it should be accountable, and that people should also be grounded in integrity. And so when I say accountability, when leaders make promises, they should keep them. And when they make mistakes, they should own them. And accessible, when I'm elected, I want them to know that I will be someone that's going to listen to them and advocate for them, not just talk at them, because that's what we have a lot of right now. I want them to know that their voices matter and that their concerns are taken seriously. And when they're grounded in integrity, it means doing what's right, even when it's hard, standing firm in your values and telling the truth and telling the truth and serving with humility. I'm not running to play politics, to chase power, or to make headlines. I'm running to make a difference and to serve, because I believe when government, it should work for the people, not the other way around. If we have faith, compassion, and justice, they can all coexist, and we can disagree without being divided. We can have tough conversations without losing our humanity, and we can move forward even when we come from different backgrounds. So I'm just going to say, District 18, we're diverse, we're resilient, and full of potential. We are educators, and we are healthcare workers, small business owners, retirees, parents, grandparents, students, and veterans. And we care deeply about our families and our future. We have leadership. We need leadership that reflects that reality. Leadership that listens before it legislates, shows up when it's inconvenient, and then speaks up for those voices when they're often ignored. I'm running because I believe in people. I believe in the power of community. And I believe when leadership is rooted in service, integrity, and compassion, real change is possible. This campaign is not about me. It's about us. It's about restoring trust, rebuilding hope, and ensuring that every voice in District 18 is heard and valued. And I got a little story to tell you. And it's when I was graduating from junior high school. A lot of people say middle school, but I say junior high school. And my principal, he gave us some advice. And what he said was, it was 10 words, 2 letters each. And what he said was, if it is to be, it is up to me. However, I'm going to change the last word because it just fits better and it is an inclusive. And what I'm going to say to that is, if it is to be, it is up to we, because we are all in this together. I'm ready to listen. I'm ready to serve and do the work. That's why I'm running.
Let's dive into your policy platform. Economic stability is something that you truly are pushing for. You want to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. What do you mean by living wage?
So people should not work full time and still live in poverty. So I will say this. I want to, first of all, we have to talk about both. So a living wage right now for the federal minimum wage is $7.25. It's been $7.25 since 2009. But in Florida, thank goodness, in 2020, we voted to increase the minimum wage to $15. And so right now, this year is the last year that it's taken effect and it will reach $15. But people are still struggling and they are still having problems paying for groceries, housing, utilities, and healthcare. So we have to make sure that the rest of the country can catch up. And we also have to make sure that Florida can be that leader and show the country what it looks like to have a minimum wage of more than $15. And I am in support of increasing the federal minimum wage.
Oftentimes when candidates propose raising the minimum wage, one of the criticisms you'll hear is that maybe, yes, Walmart, Target, big multinational corporations with a lot of cash flow can afford to pay higher wages, but small business owners can't. How do you respond to those critics who believe that raising the minimum wage hurts small business owners?
So as Florida did it, they did it in increments. You can't raise it at one time because that will hurt them. But I support increasing it and then give the small businesses the support they need to adapt to those changes. So if we have to break it out over a few years so that they can adjust, I think that is the best way to do it because that's how Florida did it. So I understand that corporations, they have the money to do it, and small businesses, everyone will benefit if we can have living wages, because people are tired because they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And so we're going to definitely support the small businesses because they're the backbone of this nation, really. If we don't support them, then we won't be able to have the minimum wage move up. And, you know, when workers are paid fairly and businesses are supported responsibly, communities thrive. So we have to make sure that we are taking care of our small businesses.
So So let's move on to protecting workers' rights to organize. You're someone who's promoting workers' rights. What is your workers' rights plan?
So, you know, Cameron, there are already laws and acts in national that we already have. So, and then in 2025, last year, Congress already has a bill on the floor for the PRO Act, which is to protect the workers' right to organize. But it hasn't been passed. It hasn't been brought to the floor because, to be honest, this 119th Congress is the least effective Congress on record. That's just the fact. And so we can't get anything passed. We can't get anything done because no one wants to talk to each other. We have to have a conversation. There's already a bill on the floor. I would support it, of course, because that act, the PRO Act, the protect workers' right to organize, it will strengthen the protections that the National Labor Relations Act already there. So we need to make sure that it's strengthening what's already there to ensure workers the right to organize and collectively bargain for better wages, benefits, and conditions. And I will say one other thing to that. It is documented that workers who are part of a union, they receive higher wages and their employer provided health insurance is up compared to others. And so they've got a lot of benefits. I know people don't say, they say, I don't want any more coming out of my paycheck, but you have Social Security coming out of your paycheck. And now they want to say that that's a benefit. So we have to start somewhere.
If elected, would you incorporate the voices of labor union leaders in public policy?
You have to speak with them because they're on the ground and they know what's going on. So we have to make sure that we have an intelligent conversation with those who are already in power, right? So the unions and the labor forces, they're already there. We need their voices because we can't legislate without knowing what's going on. That's the problem with a lot of things right now. We've got people who have been out of touch for a long time and they want to, it looks good on paper, but it doesn't make sense when you have to implement it. So yes, I would definitely engage with them.
And in terms of workers' rights, how would you describe Congress? You had mentioned that this Congress that we currently have is the least effective. How would you describe the Congress's relationship to workers and to labor?
Well, I can say the what I can say about Congress's relationship to workers is they didn't want to increase the minimum wage. That's the first thing. That tells me that they don't care about people who are working because if they cared, they would have at least passed that for the federal minimum wage to be increased. Now, from 2009 to now, that's a long time. And I'm sorry, what was the other question? Sorry.
Oh, just the over how you view the overall relationship between Congress and workers who everyday workers.
I think some of our congressmen and women are out of touch. I just do because when the government was shut down and we needed healthcare subsidies to be extended, it just seemed like they were not putting the country first. They expired. They passed it in the House. It is now sitting in the Senate. So I don't think some of them don't really care about or about the people. That's my opinion, and I don't think they care. So
Do you think it would take electing more politicians from the working class to remedy that issue, or is it something way beyond that to uh, see to see the reforms that you would like?
I don't think it could. So let me say this: we might need to elect more people who are working class. But what I would say to that is, Cameron, I believe that we need to have a conversation. We can't just stay in our bubbles. We've got red on one side, blue on one side, and we need to come together. And we need to care more about the people that elected us than we dislike the other party. It's not going to work. We have to have a conversation that, and if it weren't for tariffs, I would have somebody out for a cup of coffee. But coffee is expensive now. So maybe we'll just have some tea. So I'm just saying we need to have a conversation. And once we have the conversation, you know, compromise is what it is. But you can't compromise if you don't speak to one another. We have to do that.
Let's go into something that you have especially direct experience with, which is education. You've been in the education sector in your career. You want to increase teacher pay and support. How much do you want to increase teacher pay to?
So that's a good question. Oh my goodness, you've got great questions. And yeah, it's personal for me. I started in 1990. Ooh, counting my years. Okay, I started in 1990 working for in the education system, and up until last a few weeks ago, I resigned because of I couldn't work full time and still do this, but I was making the same amount as a teacher in 1990 that I was just a few weeks ago. So, to answer your question, Senators Bernie Sanders and Markey, they have already introduced bills to increase teacher pay. But what happens? It sits there, it gets dropped and never brought to the floor, never passed. They want to increase it to $60,000 per teacher. And I say that if we could use the budget that was given to other agencies, we could definitely make that happen. I would say maybe 50,000 because they want to increase it to 60, and then also with support staff. But if we stop defunding education, maybe we could increase their salaries, and maybe we wouldn't have a shortage in Florida for this school year of 3,000 teachers and 45,000 around the country. Maybe we could do that if we could increase their salary.
By the way, you received a comment here saying supporting in support of you. I just wanted to share that here on the show. But in terms of education and your direct experience, and you had mentioned earlier in the program that that policy is personal, it's not just abstract. What have you learned personally in the education sector that you would like to translate into public policy? What lessons have you learned?
I've learned that educators need to be supported. They need a salary that is going to support their lifestyle as well. They need not to, they need to feel safe. Let's go there because that is a big part of it. Whether they're concerned about someone coming in and shooting the place up or within their own classrooms getting beat up. So we need to make sure that teachers are supported, educators are supported. And what I would do is say to this, if there was a physician, physicians don't have to pay for their own supplies. We need to make sure that teachers are supported, that they can get the resources that they need, staff support, up-to-date materials, technology. And so that includes health and wellness resources. So we need to make sure that happens. And if we can get a bill that has the amount of money, $350 billion, if we can get the money, then we can make sure that teachers could have all of those things.
Let's touch on one quick thing regarding education, then we're going to go to your plan to defend democracy. You want to make college more affordable. Some candidates will go on the campaign trail saying we need free college. Are you in that camp, or do you have another variation in policy to make college more affordable?
So we have a lot of things already in place, Cameron. Thank you for that question. We have things in place for children and students wanting to further their education. And so we need to just look at expanding and simplifying the FAFSA, right? The federal aid, for financial aid. We got to make it easier for them to access that. Right now, do you realize that it is like you have to have a PhD or law degree to complete that application? Who's doing that? Like, that makes no sense. Help them out, let them get what they need so that they can move on. They can't navigate that application. I went on there. I was like, oh my goodness, you need all of this to do that. Give me a break. So that's one thing. And this is already there, but we have to make it easier for them. And also, what I would look at is some type of zero interest loan for educators or people wanting to go into to college. And how about we expand the public service loan forgiveness? Can we do that? Because when I was in school, another story. When I was in school, I qualified for a Perkins loan, and that loan was forgiven after a certain amount of time, so that I could teach in an area of shortage area, which was speech correction, and every year, a portion of that loan was forgiven for 5 years. But you see, it was discontinued in 2017. We are not making this easier for our children. And education is not an expense, it's an investment. It's an investment in our workforce, our democracy, and our future. And it's not just for college, it's from kindergarten to college. We're talking about it all from kindergarten to college.
You mentioned democracy. Let's transition to your plan to defend democracy. You
Sure.
want to fight against gerrymandering as an independent. There are state legislatures and states in general that have been in a race to have partisan gerrymandering in their states. How are you, as a lone independent, if elected, going to fight against partisan gerrymandering?
Yeah, well, Florida is one of those states in the process of, they like to say redistricting because that sounds better, but we know what it is. It is gerrymandering because there's a difference, right? Gerrymandering is strategic, and it's a manipulation uh, of the boundaries to specific districts to favor a particular party or group, which undermines the principle of our fair representation. But redistricting, if we did it right, it's in the Constitution. One person, one vote, and every 10 years. How am I going to? This is what we're going to do. And I can tell you there are only 7 states that are doing this right now. We need to propose, or I will propose, legislation to establish national standards for redistricting across the United States. So this would make it uniform for uniform approaches to fair map drawing, to include language requiring an independent redistricting commission. Only 7 states do that right now. We've got 50 of them. 43 are behind. Let's catch up.
What's the it's one thing to persuade voters that you're against partisan gerrymandering, but then you're going to work with members of Congress who are Republicans and Democrats, and they'll justify partisan gerrymandering. How would you persuade them? Because you have to get a majority just to pass the House on a bill such as the one that you would propose. So what would be your way of persuasion there?
So I will say this. In addition to the cup of tea, We'll have some scones. We'll sit down, and I want to hear what their reasoning is for wanting to do it mid-decade. They have to tell me what the reason is. And it can't just be because we want to stay in power. They won't say that, but we want to make sure that we know the reasons behind it. Because if you look at what some states are doing, they're only going into certain districts, which you can't tell me that that's lawful, and you can't tell me that that is fair. So you have to tell me that, why you want to do it, and we'll talk about it. And then maybe we'll come to my side. But I can tell you 7 states already have it. And I think that they're going in the right direction with that.
We'll get to your closing thoughts in a moment. Just one final question about
Yes.
increasing, to go away from the gerrymandering topic to talk about increasing government transparency. Is there one policy or item that you could deliver to increase transparency in Washington, D.C.?
Cameron. Well, what I will say is, we have to, it's subjective, right? Because we have to counter disinformation. We have to counter disinformation. Misinformation is accidental, right? Disinformation is purposeful. So we've got to counter that by telling the truth at all times and hold people accountable when they're not being truthful, and ensuring oversight when necessary. I'm going to give you one more story. And that is, on Monday, I attended the Highlands County NAACP MLK Martin Luther King Jr. breakfast. I attended that breakfast in one of our counties. And later in the week, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, I received a text message with a screenshot of our representative on his page saying that he was there. Well, what I will tell you is, please tell the truth, because we all know you weren't there. Don't make it seem to your constituents and the people who love you in that particular county that you were somewhere where you're not. I know that there is only one person that is omnipresent, and that's not him. And so when I say that, we have got to make sure, and to his defense, he may not run his own Facebook page, but know what's going on there. You cannot tell an untruth and think that you're not going to get called out. So he was not there. So we've got to counter it at all times with integrity and listening.
You're one of the first candidates I've ever had to actually call out politicians in this manner. I find it refreshing. We're going to give you a chance to say anything you would like. Every candidate, whoever appears on this program, gets to say anything that they would like. Anything you want to say, you want to plug your campaign website, the floor is yours, Deva Simmons.
Thank you so much, Cameron, for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I really appreciate you. And my final message is just this: I'm running to serve. I'm not running to divide. I believe we can rebuild trust, restore hope, and rise stronger together. I ask for your support, but most of all, your prayers. If you go to my website, devasimmons.com, you can volunteer, you can donate, and there's even a link for you to be able to register to vote and check your voting status. When the time comes, whether you vote early, vote by mail, or vote in person, I'd ask you to remember Deva. I will defend democracy. I will elevate Elohim. I will be a voice for the vulnerable, and I will advocate for all. Thank you for the opportunity to serve on this call. I am Deva Simmons. I'm ready to work for District 18. If it is to be, it is up to we.
Deva Simmons, thank you so much for being on the program. And that's the end of the interview.
Thank you.